In today's conversation, I'm speaking with Dr. Christy Wise. Dr. Wise is a psychologist and a life coach who specializes in intimate relationships. And I called her to talk about the one very intimate relationship that I struggle with the most: self-love. I'm very resistant to the movement of it that to me feels like it pushes us all to be perfect and to accept all of our flaws and think there's nothing wrong with them, to shed any remorse for any ill behavior. And I was just adamant about how I just thought there had to be a better way. But in my research, I had a bit of an epiphany about the resistance I was feeling, and that maybe, just maybe, that was because I needed to practice more self-love. So, of course, Dr. Wise understood that, and our conversation kind of turned into a therapy session. I was going to scrap it but I chose not to. I got a lot out of it, and she taught me a thing called wiggle room. And I want to share that with you. I hope you like it.
Hey baby, it's time for the NIKKI ALPERT Podcast. Come on, pull up a chair. We gonna have some fun.
Dr. Christy Wise, welcome to my virtual chair.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Guys, Christy is a psychologist, a trained psychologist who actually doesn't practice anymore, right?
Right.
So you coach now. Well, you retired,
Yeah.
but you still work.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's really actually kind of cool. So I spent, 30 years in practice. I hate to age myself like that, but whatever, And I realized that there had to be more. I really love to see my clients move along. And I recognized that, there are some people that just came week after week, week after week. And so I took a reprieve and did a ton of research and decided that a coaching approach allowed me to do something and work in a different way than I have worked as a therapist, right? Because people are kind of afraid of a shrink, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as a coach, I can be in it and like on the field, literally, like in life with them. But it's also with 30 years of experience and lots of degrees and all the psychology backing it. So it's like this engine, but the coaching part drives it forward. And I absolutely love that part of it.
I love that idea too. But the main thing that I love about you is that you specialize in intimate relationships. And, intimacy, so many people struggle with it. And the one area that I struggle with it the most is my relationship with myself. Really what I want to talk about is feeling the love for yourself. And I know that word, self-love, it's such a big thing right now. And listen, it goes back a billion years. But 21st century self-love genre is so in your face. And I have been so irked by it. And all of the stuff that I was doing to prepare for this conversation was all about my irked feeling about it. And then last night I was having a conversation with somebody, and he said to me, "You're so hard on yourself." Christy, it was like, me? Oh my God, maybe that's why I'm so irked by it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So now my whole feeling about it is different.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
I have all these negative feelings about how it makes people so egocentric, and it makes people push away their remorse for things that they've done because they're perfect, and that if we're creating goddesses, then where's the room for failure and all of that stuff. And then yesterday I thought, well, but also maybe there's a difference between building your self-esteem to think you're better than other people and building tools of self-care so that when you're in a moment where you feel like crap, you would be as kind to you can be as kind to you as you would be to a friend. So can you help me with that?
Yes, I love where you're going with it, by the way, because it's actually a conflict, like this push-pull that most of us have, especially people around our age, because we see it as indulgent and self-righteous, but it's this interesting mix. It's actually much deeper than what we're talking about, because self-love is, yes, the taking care of yourself and paying attention to your needs and all of that other stuff. But it's also, just like we would parent our kids, it's loving ourselves enough to be completely honest, to be, yes, pay attention to the flaws so that we can make an impact in the world, not just for ourselves, but that we give ourselves a bye. Like, you know, self-love to me is where you recognize, and I'm going to try not to use foul language because it just comes out. So I'm going to,
I think it's funny. Go ahead.
I drop F-bombs, and I'm sorry. You know, some people are like, oh my God. But, you know, like it's this idea that if we're fucked up in any way, then it's not appropriate or not okay. And I believe that self-love is just like we would let our kids, like we know each kid is, they're good at something and they're not great at another. We don't punish them for not being great at it. We just have them embrace the things that they're good at. Mm-hmm. And we don't give ourselves that same type of latitude. So it's not a self-righteousness. It's like an ownership. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
If you and I were meeting for coffee and you showed up 15 minutes late and you were totally overwhelmed and you had a fight with your husband and you forgot your wallet and you're like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I feel like, Christy, I would grab your head and I would hold you to my chest and I would tell you that it was going to be okay and I would tell you to breathe. But I do that to myself. Yeah. And like literally, like if I'm flipping chicken in the kitchen and it splatters, oh my God, I'm so bad at cooking. I'm making such a mess. And it just spirals. Like I am never as kind to me as I would totally be to you. Never. No, why is that so hard?
Yeah, because, you know, I this is never ever to blame parents. We're both moms. Like I hate it. I hate the idea. But the truth is, our parents and we do the very best that we can, and nobody teaches us that. Nobody. And somewhere along the line, we hear it like it's a woo-woo thing, right? And it's a hard one to give ourselves permission to learn as adults. But imagine if, as a kid, somebody was really supportive of the fact that you spilled milk and was like, no problem, let's go figure out where the paper towels are, and like totally empower them to clean the floor or clean, do you know what I mean? Like it's just not something that we're naturally taught. Right. And even worse, we train people how to treat us. So we train other people to be hard on us too.
Yeah, because somehow we think that motivates us. But interesting that you say that people don't, it starts with parents and that they don't train us. But I kind of feel like maybe, you know, in those very formative years, 3 to 7, whatever it is, that form your attachment styles to people, that if your parents do admonish you for spilling milk, did you just make a mess in the kitchen? Then you're hard on yourself for making a mess. So maybe it did come from
And
that.
by the way, it's not even, but it's not even like, oh, I was never punished for spilling milk. It's not that. It could be the opposite. Like, you know, like when you're a kid doing sports and you got rewarded when you won, right? The team, like, you know, like that everyone gets a trophy and we get pizza. Oh, you didn't win, maybe next time, no pizza. So you start to learn that the only way that you get, you know, love or admiration or, you know, cheering is if you do it right. And when you don't get the same prize rather than celebrating the try.
Yeah, which is interesting because there, I think, in lies the difference between building self-esteem and building self-care. Does that make sense to you as clearly as it does to me?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, well, I mean, you know, you mentioned football games and stuff like that, or a team, and for some reason that made me think of men. Do men struggle with self-care and self-love as much as women do?
Yeah, I want to tell you, it's probably it's probably harder for them because it feels, we made it such a feminine thing, self-care. And by the way, self-care and self-love are very different in my mind. But even self-love, you know, because, I mean, women have a lot of pressure, but guys these days have so much pressure. They need to be strong and sensitive. They need to bring home the money and be around for the kids. They need to be a great lover, but be really inquisitive. There's such expectation on men these days. I mean, women too, don't get me wrong, but I think that guys have a really hard time. And when they do love themselves, oftentimes it comes off as narcissistic because they're not sure how to navigate it all that well.
What is the
Yes.
best way to do that so that when you say, stay out of the bathroom, I need a bath, or when you say, I'm going here to do this because my soul needs that, so that it's not misunderstood or it's not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So because it's a new skill, most of us come out of the gate hot. Like, we want to set a boundary. I need something instead, you know what I mean? So it's like you learn your voice, and it's like Darth Vader with a lightsaber, but not knowing how to work it. It's like, so we come out like hot rather than coming out from a place of love. Like, I'm practicing this thing and I think I need to set a boundary because I just need a few minutes to be alone in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And even more so, to love yourself enough to know that this relationship is important and you're not trying to damage anything. You're trying to care for them and care for you. So coming out maybe at a 4 rather than an 11.
Yeah. Which is interesting because, it's interesting because you talk about how, you want to feed the love affair or your family affair well. And the clearest example of it is the air mask from the airplane. When there's no air, if you don't put yours on first, you can't help anybody. I mean, I definitely put myself first a lot. I have found all sorts of things that bring me joy and I practice them. But I still beat the crap out of myself. And that's, is that what most of us do?
Yes. So I'm so glad you asked that because I have the answer for that.
Yay!
So the answer is this. So motivation and habit come from 2 different places in our brain. And so what we want to do, have a new behavior, we beat the shit out of ourselves because we can't figure out how we can't just change it. But our brains love what's familiar. We crave what's familiar. As a matter of fact, you can think of like people who haven't only smoked when they drank in college, but walk into a bar and crave a cigarette, even though they haven't smoked for 20 years, right? Because we crave what feels normal. Except that when we want to learn a new behavior, that literally fights against what feels, like our habit. Right. So when you're learning a new skill, it feels like this hokey experience of redirecting yourself. Like, just like with a kid, when you say, don't touch the stove, don't touch the stove. And then a few times they'll touch it and then they learn. It's the same way to teach ourselves. But again, it sounds very like California woo-woo, but it's really the truth. It's the only way that we have to intervene those habits so that we can create new ones. And it's not easy because, like I said, they come from different parts of our brain.
But here's my other question about that. Like, some days, I can get out of the bath, I can look at myself naked and be like, yeah, that's good. 20 minutes later, I can walk by a mirror and be like, ugh. Or the next day can be filled with more ugh than good. I mean, it's like, it's always different. And you know what? It doesn't stop me from doing things.
Yes.
But the noise in my head, if you could hear it, and I would imagine that whatever my noise is could have a perfect conversation with whatever's going on in yours also. Or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Do you have those moments that I have?
Oh, yes. I love that. So I call it the negotiator, by the way. So we all have a negotiator in our head, like, oh, I look good. And then the negotiator says, no, you don't. Your thighs look wide. You know what I mean? Like,
I know that person.
Okay. Yes. Like, right. We all have a negotiator, and that negotiator just kills us. And so one of the habits that or ways I practice new habits with people is to not let yourself negotiate, because the problem is you're so smart, you'll always win the negotiation. You'll always win. So like blocking the negotiation immediately and not allowing that, because we always have a negotiator. And as a matter of fact, a lot of us have lots of negotiators. We have our grandmother in our head, we have our mother, we have our husband, we have all these negotiators. And they always win.
When my children were young and my daughter was like 13 and started the whole talking back thing, a friend of mine said to me, when she does that, don't engage, because the minute you engage, they dumb you down and you lose. Don't engage. So it's the same idea. Like, the minute you engage with that negotiator, you lose. But the question is, how do you shut what's going on in your head off?
Yeah. Well, the first step is stopping the negotiation. And then the next step is redirecting from the voice of who's in front of you, who you want to be. So if you were to say, no, I'm not negotiating about my thighs, my good self-esteem person says, you know what? You look badass for 54. Like, you are fine. And let's invite that person in to comment, even though it feels hokey.
Yeah.
Like, in my back of my head, I go, that's not so true. I still hear the negotiator wanting to, you know what I mean? But we have to intervene with something that's more powerful. And it's actually in front of us, not behind us, not old conversations that we have about ourselves. Because, by the way, we have old conversations about ourselves and they don't even fit us anymore.
That's right. That's right. Because we change every day, and who we decided we were going to be at 4 does not apply anymore. But it is so, but it's like the 4-year-old who's telling me all that stuff all day long, and I converse with that kid and I lose every time. But does it go away? Does the negotiator? Does the negotiator?
Oh my God, negotiator, yeah.
Does she ever just lose? And does she ever shut up?
Yes.
Yes?
She does. She atrophies, by the way. She atrophies. So, let me give you an example. I had this client, and she came from a very conservative back east. All the family were like, Ivy League and very conservative, buttons up to here. And she came to California, and she was shocked because the women she felt were both beautiful and smart. But where she was raised, you cannot be beautiful or sexy and smart. You have to choose. You're either a bimbo or you're either a smart, brilliant woman you're right. And she longed to have both. And so we literally had to chip away at that whole voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And slowly she wore a shirt with a button, and then she practiced one more button. Like, she literally had to push so that she was uncomfortable enough that during Christmas she went home and she had cleavage. And of course, she knew her family they were going to be appalled by the fact that she was showing up as an attorney with boobs. Like, that doesn't, how do you have, so she got to challenge that. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, but she was prepared because she had to practice it so much so that she almost had to desensitize and not listen to that old record.
But when she got home,
so proud.
Because you know how, like, what sounds incredible, but you know how, like, when you maybe outside of the home, if you're the middle kid, you are successful. But then when you go home, you're that middle kid who gets pushed around by your older sister and your younger brother. So how does she deal with being at home? Was that, did she hold up her end of the bargain that she went into it with?
She did. She felt herself shrink.
Yeah.
Because she, with lots of powerful women in her family, but we prepared her for that.
Good.
And, it was quite the learning experience, because when you want to have a different conversation about yourself, you have to train other people to have a different conversation about you too.
Yeah.
You can't just hide the part that you want and then be hurt that people don't respond to you accordingly.
Right.
So she had to go in and come from a place of love. Like, I know that this isn't for you guys, but I'm super excited about this new thing I've experienced in myself, and I feel sexy and I feel smart. And of course her mother was like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I tell you what, it probably inspired the hell out of her family.
I was just going to ask you that.
Family that went home that night and thought, yeah, she felt really powerful. She told me on the plane, coming back to California, tears were just rolling down the sides of her face because she realized that she advocated for herself, her new self.
And I think it's incredibly cool. And not to mention that when you own a room that way, when you own your soul and you own a room that way, of course you inspire other people to feel the same way. I mean, how could you not? And I would guess that when you're talking to people about self-love, that your practice and your feeling about it shine through, and that's why you do it so well. But I'm kind of more interested in the times that you can't do it.
Oh, yes. Oh, and there are lots. There are lots.
Tell me one.
There are lots. If I have a bad parenting moment, I joke, I call them my bad parenting moments, because we have them all the time. We just don't tell the truth about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with my background, people expect me to be right on all the time. And if I come home and I'm tired and I have PMS, whatever it is that I have going on, and I hear myself bark, and then one of my sons, because I've taught them how to communicate, says, Mom, it sounds like you were frustrated about your day and not me. Like in my head, I'm like, shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I hear myself beat the hell out of my, like, what did I do? And, like I go through this whole, like, oh my God, like, but I had to go through and really look at who these kids are and say, you know what, I'm going to have bad parenting moments.
Yeah.
That's actually part of self-love, is to say, I have good parenting moments and really bad ones. And thank God that they recognize my bad ones, because they have the courage to call me out. But I see them all the time.
Which, by the way, makes you a good parent, because he had the courage to call you out.
Yes.
It's weird to think that people like you, who spend your life helping other people do this, like, in other words, does it ever go away?
No, but you know what, Nikki? I think the idea is that we lean in, instead of leaning away. So when I went to Pepperdine for my first master's, and I had a professor, I remember she told me, and I might have told you the story, I don't know, but, I was young, I was in my 20s, and, I grew up in LA, so super vain, everyone has, their hair color and their boobs and all this stuff. And, that's just the way it is in LA, or in the entertainment industry. And this professor said to me, Christy, nobody will ever take you serious as a clinician until you let your hair go gray and gain 60 pounds. And I remember getting in my car, and when you cry so hard that you go,
Yeah.
It was one of those cries. Like I had one of those, and I thought, I'm never going to let myself go gray and get fat. You know what I mean? And then it dawned on me as I started building my practice, and I had a 3-month waiting list, and I use foul language, and I dye my hair, and I've got boobs. But the clients that are coming to me are the clients I can help. And the ones that don't, they can go to somebody who's gray and 70 pounds overweight.
Or your professor. Yeah.
That's right. Go to my professor. But
Yeah.
It took me a lot I really thought about quitting and becoming an orthodontist.
Yeah, because I have beautiful teeth, and so they'll come to me for that. But I mean, but there's somebody for everybody, like there is in every walk of life. There's somebody for everybody, and so people who can see themselves in you want to sit in your chair, and people who see themselves in a more matronly, gray-haired woman will go sit in her chair. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I had so many questions about it, and I worry that all my questions were more about my fighting the new thing that it's become, as opposed to what I realized last night, which kind of threw me for a loop. And of course I was up all night thinking about it, thinking, oh, you're so dumb, how did you not know that? How did you? So there was a lot of that going on last night.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way so that, like you keep mentioning the woo-woo-ness of it, in the way that the culture thinks of it now. I worry that it's making a bunch of narcissistic women who are afraid of failure, which is the only way we grow. And I would love to reintroduce a way of self-love that isn't California woo-woo, but that is just part of a natural way to make sure that you get your air so you can help other people. So can you pitch it to me in a new way so that I don't feel woo-woo-y and...
Yeah. So Lily, if I can ask you about the epiphany that you had last night?
Yeah.
And when it first hit you that what you thought and what you felt kind of didn't match up, how did you digest that? How did you merge them?
Well, they didn't merge immediately. I felt like a fraud at first.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, then more self-deprecating thoughts happened. And I thought, oh my God, do other people realize that if they could hear the stuff that goes on in your head? Like, when I do hair and people sit down and they think I'm a genius at it, the shit that goes on in my head, Christy, about, oh my God, I hope this lifts. Oh my God, I hope that's the right toner. Oh my God, I hope I didn't cut too much off. Oh my God, I do that. And then, and then when they leave and they hug me and they pay me, and then I just like decompress. And I can't believe that doing all of this research on self-love that I wasn't aware that I'm kind of a fraud because, so I guess it made me feel like a fraud. And then it made me just feel more human and realize that there is a bigger need for it and that I shouldn't poo-poo it and that I should find a way to embrace it, even though it makes me uncomfortable, which again, aren't we supposed to embrace all things that make us uncomfortable?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Because in a way, it kind of answers your question too, the one that
Which
you
is the
asked
idea,
me.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Because it's like, how do we integrate this? Like, okay, how do we not make it woo-woo? Well, first of all, because it's becoming more familiar. And anytime there's something brand new, like, I don't know if you remember when selfies first came out. And I was like, selfies, like we're taking pictures of ourselves. Like I was so confused by this, and it seemed so narcissistic. It seems so like, really, why do we want pictures of ourselves like all over the place? Like, you know what I mean? But after a while, we kind of all acclimated to it or assimilated to it, just like it was a different culture.
Yeah.
And so the idea of this self-love, like deep self-love, and I don't just mean like giving yourself a bubble bath, that's self-care, but like deep self-love is something that we have to assimilate to. It's something that we have to start integrating so it becomes regular. And then it's not so woo-woo. You know, like the idea of selfies, was so silly, but now all of a sudden I see like, great grandmothers doing selfies with their dog. And it's, you know what I mean? And at the beginning it was like, what is that about?
When you have your dog in it, it doesn't feel narcissistic to me. But those people who post, those people I know who have the same pose in their car every 3 days, different outfit, maybe different eyeshadow, but it's the same pose because they know that's their great lighting and that better side of their face, still feels uncomfortable to me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Me too. And I'm definitely not one to do selfies. If you look on my social media, you'll see lots of pictures of my dog, and usually I'm not in any of them. But I get it. I get the idea of the deeper idea of this is me having fun, and this is me in my life, and this is me where I think I look okay. And this is it's less like what. Like now I understand it a little bit more.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the idea of not making self-love so woo-woo, because I think what you're not okay with is the idea of the extreme part of it. Like, for instance, people, and this is wherever people's stance on getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated, but there are certain people that are, there's self-preservation, and they don't think about the impact, you know what I mean? Or whether it's the impact of even recycling or whatever it is that you believe in. So I think for you, it was the idea of the extreme. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, wow, can the pendulum be somewhere in the middle? Am I allowed to do that?
And that is exactly, and in fact, I had a question about the pendulum. Like, could the pendulum swing too far? Which is how I feel like the 21st century definition of self-love is way over there in the narcissistic, I'm great, there's nothing wrong with me, I look great, I'm smarter than you. It's a separation as opposed to what you said at the beginning, where it brings us into servicing others, and because we work on our negative things, it makes us better people, which in turn serves the world better.
That's right. That's right. And I believe the pendulum is going to swing back, because if you think back about your great grandmother and how, at least
selfless.
Selfless. They were completely void of, it didn't matter. They got up, they served everybody until from the moment they woke up till the moment they went to bed. It was almost like this martyrism.
Yeah, and then those 1950s school books where they said to make sure you had your makeup on when your husband came home from work and all that stuff.
That's it. Put a smile on your face and don't let the kids
shut up.
Yes, that's right. Only speak when you've been spoken to, and make sure your man is taken care of. All of that stuff. And then the pendulum, the women came out and they took off their bras and they're like, no, like the pendulum kind of swung. And I believe that the pendulum is kind of going to swing back a little bit, and we're going to find something in between it all. At least that's our responsibility, by the way, is to normalize the in between it all.
Right. And especially as women in our 50s who are trying to help the next generation of women to do better. So when you talked about the bra burning and all of that stuff, do you think that we're still on that swing, or do you think that we've gone bra burning back in the middle and now we're back to this way again?
No, I think it went bra burning and then even worse, because the bra burning was a statement of, you can't hold me down. That, and women's rights and women in the flat, there was a movement.
Yeah.
But then it got to be like, oh no, me, I need, I want, you know what I mean? It became too much.
Yeah.
Like, instead of actually what the movement was about.
Right.
And so I think that we hit a really yucky time where it was so self-absorbed. And I believe that slowly it's starting to, we care about the environment, we care about different cultures, we care about, like, we're speaking up. And so I believe that the pendulum in a really beautiful way is, we just have to practice, because at our age, by the way, we're not used to having both. Having it be okay that we are both sometimes martyr ourselves and sometimes completely take a stand for ourselves. And depending on my mood, tomorrow it might be totally different.
Okay, so that's the exact point we have to make, I guess, is that self-love is not about being in a great place all the time.
No.
Because how natural could that be? And you can still, right? I mean, who's capable of that?
Nobody. And there's nothing lonelier, by the way. There's nothing lonelier than being in that place. And I've seen it for 30 years where people say, I've never felt better about myself. I make great money. I have a good career. I have a good partner. And I don't know why I feel so alone.
And you say to them?
I say to them, now it's time to let the pendulum swing back a little bit, where you get to be flawed and let people recognize you and see you, like, so that you can see them,
Yeah, there's nothing beautiful about perfection.
No.
And
Yes. You know what, Nikki, I mean, I love that you said it, because even I mean, I'm a relationship expert, but I also relationships of all kinds, with our
Right.
kids, with us, with all that. And, like, if we look at just marriage, there's a very strong statistic that says couples who are well off, who are wealthy, are less happy and satisfied and have a higher rate of divorce than people who have not as much. And when you don't have everything you've ever dreamt of, you start to open your eyes to see value in things that are around you, value in the kids and the family, or the,
yeah,
you know what I
things
mean?
you have instead of things you want.
That's right. Because you have to somewhere digest the fact that this is your life.
Yeah.
So you're willing to open your eyes to, it might not be great, but we have each other.
Yeah. If we can find a place in the middle to accept a swinging pendulum, as opposed to one that's either over here or one that's there, but just one that sort of does this all day long, because that's what it does.
Yes.
So if we can get to that just comfortable resting place, do you think it would help with all of the anxiety that everybody seems to be riddled with these days?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. 2,000%. When you have wiggle room,
Yeah, it's a way better way to say that, wiggle room.
Yeah. Well, think about this. Think about, like, when a woman has her period or she has PMS, she makes a declaration. I don't care. I have my period. I'm eating these nachos and I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, we make this declaration and then we're okay. We eat the nachos and we're like, Monday, because we own it.
Yeah.
We're like, that's okay. And so when you have freedom, it's exactly what it feels like. Freedom. If not, we're carrying the weight of the world. Like, okay, tomorrow I better be great. Tomorrow I better be pretty. Tomorrow I better be smart. There's no way we can uphold that all the time, especially as we age.
Right. Oh my God. And you're talking about perfection in marriages, because it's so much easier to wrap your head around. Because again, self-love, those big words. And by the way, I see self-love in big capital letters in these bold things that are on my notes. And I run from it because it just feels like a lie to me. But wiggle room is such a better way to say it. How do we pass that beauty along so that so women can do this?
Yeah. So what you're doing is incredibly generous and extraordinary. because you are literally offering people the opportunity to learn and hear through your own epiphany. And that's how you do it. You live it. You have to actively, just like a muscle, work it and be it, because it's the only way, right? We're only inspired by people who have really lived it. Like Gandhi, for instance, he had nothing, but yet we all hold him in. It's Gandhi, for God's sake, because he beat it. Do you know what I mean? And you're using your generosity and compassion and amazing warm spirit and sharing it. And that is how we do it.
I am passing the word wiggle room along because I love that. And I'm giving you credit for it at every moment I ever speak of it, I promise. And I think you should write a book on it or something. Or one of your courses should be called Wiggle Room, the new word for self-love or something like that. Oh my God. I kind of feel like we just reached the basic, beautiful part of it, and we should just leave it there because I don't want to ruin it with anything. No. But is there something you want to add to that, or some exercises for wiggle room so that we can wrap this up in a wiggly, beautiful, comfortable way?
Yes. So I want you to, if I said to you, do me a favor, I want you to, because accountability is important. Tomorrow, I want you to give yourself wiggle room 3 or 4 times and then text me.
Okay.
Like, let me know I gave myself wiggle room on this. If you were a guy that had performance anxiety but you had wiggle room, didn't matter. Sometimes you're good, sometimes imagine how much more willing you were to try.
Right.
So join with somebody, get the accountability, because you'll do it 3 days and then you'll do it 3 times and you'll do it 4 times. And you're like, oh my God, like I got this. It's like riding a bike. You know how you can't describe to somebody how to do it? You have to get balance, like you have to get the distinction.
You have to wiggle into it.
That's exactly right. That's right. So I would say try it just 3 times tomorrow and let me know how it feels.
Okay, so I'm going to be accountable to you, but then I'm also going to reach out to another girlfriend who I know could use this, and I'm going to make her be accountable to me, and I'll be accountable to her as well. But I also want to say to any of my viewers, try this, because I'm sitting here thinking about the things I'm going to beat myself up about as soon as I hang up with Christy. Like, I didn't work out today. I was reading and getting ready for today. I haven't even thought about what I'm going to make for dinner, and it's not like everybody in my house can't cook for themselves. I'll figure out something. But I'm already thinking about what I'm going to not like about that I didn't take care of, that I didn't do, and how I'm going to beat myself up later. But I'm going to look for the wiggle room, and I'm going to let you know when I do it. And I hope that it doesn't feel like I made this all about me, but that instead it touched you.
So much.
I hope.
Me.
Well, that's good. I mean, but well, this is what you do, though. You listen to people, and so I'm grateful that it kind of turned into a counseling session, which was not my intention. But I hope that somebody is woken up to the wiggle room idea, because honestly, it is so much more freeing than the umbrella of self-love that just feels like a dead end to me.
Yeah, and another thing to get right.
Yeah, exactly. Who needs that? Oh my God. Okay, so remember, you guys, perfection is boring and normal is beautiful. And to beat yourself up a little bit is normal, to have those moments, and to look for a way to swing the pendulum, just not all the way back, but just back a little bit.
Yep.
Is okay. Perfection is not the goal.
No.
Oh,
Too
Christy.
much work.
It is. Thank you so much. Well, that was way quicker than I expected it to be, but right to the point. And boy, that's kind of like the idea of coaching. Just get to it and get on with it.
That's right. I want progress. I think that you are extraordinary. I want you to know that. What an amazing woman you are.
Wow, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll try to replay that in my head when I'm beating myself up.
There you go. You hear my voice. Because I know, to be honest.
Well, and listen, you're good at your job, because I think I came into this thing a little sad, and look how excited I am to try this thing that I was so afraid of. Christy, I think you're amazing. I think you're wonderful, and your generosity of giving and hearing me and knowing exactly where to go with it. Clearly, you've got this, and I am so grateful that you wanted to talk to me and share that.
Thank you. I'm here anytime.
Thank you so much, my love. What a pleasure to have you on my show and to talk to you. I can't wait to talk to you again.
I know, me too.
Okay, don't go anywhere because I'm not done with you, okay?
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, by the way, before you go, tell people where they can reach you.
Oh, I am in San Diego, and you can email me at drchristy, dr.christyw, that's Dr. Christy W, @gmail.com.
And her last name is Wise.
Yeah.
Shocking? I don't think so. What a great name. Dr. Christy Wise, thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. I'm not done.
Okay.